Chapter 17. Sarah stepped through the door with Perkins in tow. The two suited CDC personnel shuffled back to make room, as did the dazed ER doctor. The three looked at her expectantly, all of them eyeing the rifle slung on her shoulder. "You're safe," she said. "We've cleared the area. No one is here." The woman with Harold taped across her chest frowned. "You have no idea what you're talking about." Her words were muffled through the helmet, but Sarah had no problem picking up the snark in her tone. "Dr. Harrell, is it?" The woman nodded. "My team has cleared the ER. There's no one in the quarantine room, and there's no one in the trauma center except you folks." The two CDC doctors exchanged a glance. "You don't look convinced." Dr. Mathis, by his name tag, rolled his eyes. "Lieutenant, is it?" Sarah nodded. "Exactly what have you been told? Why are you here?" "We were called in to assess a hostage situation and provide protection," Sarah said. "From what?" Dr. Harrell asked. "I assumed from armed persons trying to break the quarantine." She glanced into the operating suite to her left. 2 doctors and several nurses sat on the floor inside. "Speaking of," she said, and returned her gaze to the CDC doctors, "what happened to the quarantine?" Mathis loosed a short, grim laugh. "There is no quarantine, Lieutenant. Not anymore." "What do you mean? What happened here?" Harrell and Mathis exchanged another glance. "Ma'am, sir, I need to know what happened so I can help keep you and everyone else safe. Please tell me what's going on." Harrell closed her eyes for a moment. "You won't believe us. You'll never believe us." "Try me," Sarah said. That sinking feeling she'd felt earlier crept back into her belly. "What have you seen?" Mathis asked. The other doctor, the Indian-looking one, was still sitting on the floor, his eyes unfocused and staring off into space. "The tunnel is cut from the ER. We found no bodies, but the isolation room is a complete mess. Looked like all the plastic was gone, just a bunch of metal and glass left." Mathis nodded. "What else?" "I don't know," Sarah said. "The floors are clean. The doors and walls look burned by something." "Yeah," Harold said. "What else?" "Nobody here. Been here before on a Friday night, usually buzzing with casualties and a shitload of people on staff." Harold sighed. "We sent them into the main hospital area." She pointed to the man dressed in blue scrubs on the floor. "Dr. Sharma stayed with us in the quarantine area to help out with organization and trauma surgeries." "Trauma surgeries?" Sarah echoed. "The doctor's in the suite. You have patients in surgery?" "Not anymore," Mathis mumbled. "They're dead," Sharma said. The sinking feeling in her gut turned into acid. Sarah took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. These people weren't making sense. At all. "Where are the 2 officers that are supposed to be guarding the front of the building?" "Dead," Harold said. "They're all dead." Perkins growled, but Sarah didn't look at him. "Okay, I've had enough of this. What happened?" "We had a patient," Harold said. "Had?" Sarah asked. "Had. The patient became ill after cutting herself on a barrel of oil sent from an exploration rig. 1 cut and she ended up having symptoms of both hemorrhagic and dengue fever." Harold's eyes teared up. Whatever made her sick wasn't just a virus. It was a parasite of some kind, and it... She stopped speaking and wiped her eyes. Sarah could tell the woman was on the verge of breaking down. Mathis put an arm around her, his suit crinkling with the movement. "More than a parasite," he said. "A creature of some kind." A feeling of unreality washed over her. This had to be a goddamn joke. Either that or these people had all suffered some biological attack. Perkins growled again. "Bullshit," he said in a hoarse baritone. "I'm done with the joke," Sarah said. 2 cops are missing." "They're not missing," Mathis said. The anger in his eyes just managed to mask the fear in his face. "They're fucking dead, Lieutenant. Haven't you been listening?" "Boss," Epps' voice said over the radio. "Charlie team." Sarah glared at Mathis and then touched her headset. "Go." We have something moving out front of the hospital. Something moving? Be specific, Ep. Sorry, boss, can't tell you much more than that. A number of vehicles are entering the parking lot, military by the look. Stand by. Ep didn't respond. The man knew better. She switched frequencies on her radio. Dispatch, this is SWAT Commander. Come in. Static answered, and then the fragment of an unintelligible sentence stumbled through it. Dispatch, please repeat. Another wave of static hit the speaker. She waited a moment, but no more words came through. She cursed and flipped back to the team frequency. Ep, go outside and get a better view of what's going on, then report back. Acknowledged. She dropped her eyes back to the tired, exhausted doctors. If something killed the rest of your team and the 2 officers, how come you're still alive? Luck, Mathis said. We were taking a break when it happened. Bullshit, Sarah thought. So how the hell do you know what happened? How do you know what went on in the ER if you weren't in there? The 2 CDC doctors looked at Sharma. The Indian man rocked slightly, his arms wrapped around his knees. He saw it, and after what came down the hallway, I believe him. What came down the hallway, ma'am? Perkins said. Some thing. It was black. Blacker than space. Thing. Harold's voice had stumbled on the word, almost as if she was afraid to say it out loud. What kind of thing? Sharma shuddered. His voice quivered through his rapid breathing. Ice. It's ice. They grew out of nothing. Sarah frowned. What the hell is he talking about? It came around the corner, Mathis said. Legs, tentacles, and teeth. It tried to get in, but couldn't get through the glass. Is that why you're locked in here? He nodded. Yes, Lieutenant. Otherwise we'd be out the goddamn door. Boss? Ep's voice crackled in her ear. Go ahead. We have a major problem. You better get out here. Acknowledged. She turned to Perkins. You stand guard. Try and find out what the hell is really going on here. She cast a glare at the CDC doctors. Because none of this shit makes any sense. Sarah turned to the glass door, opened it, and entered the hallway. Givens and O'Malley were still down at the far end, their rifles at the ready. O'Malley turned to look when he heard her open the door, eyebrows raised. Sarah held up a hand. The rookie nodded and resumed standing at his post. She walked around the corner and continued onward to the ER lobby. The bad feeling she'd had since they entered the hospital had only grown worse. The things the doctors were saying? Impossible. Simply impossible. But the floor glistened. There were no bodies. Missing police officers, missing CDC members, and where the hell were the patients? None of it made any damn sense. Hell, where were the security guards in this place? When she finally made it to the lobby, she was struck by the look on Schneck's face. He was still standing by the hallway, but no longer turned to it. Instead, he stared out the double doors. What's up? He didn't turn to her. Bad, boss. It's bad. Better talk to Ep. Sarah didn't reply but kept walking until she could see the double doors leading to the parking lot. Something banged outside. It was difficult to place the sound with the howling wind and rain beyond. But then it hit her. Hammers. Then she heard the whir of drills, and bit by bit, the double doors were disappearing. Ep! She yelled. He stood in the space between the inner and outer doors, rifle pointed to the floor. A piece of metal slammed over the lower half of the outer doors, then another. The grind of heavy-duty drills followed close behind. They're locking us in, boss. Ep's face was flushed with anger, but there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. She walked past him and then looked out into the parking lot through the remaining gaps in the outer doors. Several men in military uniforms stood in a line, assault rifles pointed in the general direction of the ER. Is that a goddamn tank? She asked. Ep nodded. I went outside to find out what the hell was going on. He swallowed hard, and she looked at him. I was told to get back inside the hospital and not attempt to leave. She already knew the answer, but she had to ask. Or else what? He sneered. or else they open fire." He saw the look on her face and nodded. "We're under quarantine. The whole goddamn hospital is." The fear, that cold, gripping hand that had caressed her back, her spine, and made something inside her shiver, touched her heart. "This is really happening," she thought. "Eb, I want you to keep trying to get dispatch on the radio. You let me know when you get them." "Yes, boss." The whirring continued behind the entry doors. Sarah turned and walked back into the lobby. The glass partition separating the ER from the rest of the hospital caught her eye. She walked to it and banged on the glass. The partition shivered, but held just fine. "We're quarantined," she whispered. Through the glass, she saw a security guard at the other end of the hall. He was watching her, but made no move to come forward. She waved at him and beckoned. The man didn't move. "Fucker," she said under her breath, and turned back to the ER room. The blackened and melted plastic drew her. She stepped to it and studied the edges. The plastic hadn't curled or melted like it did from flame. Something had sliced through it and burned it, but the rest of the plastic hadn't reacted at all. With those thoughts in her mind, she walked back into the main ER room. A Glock 40, just like the one she carried in her holster, still sat next to the doorframe. Sarah lowered herself to one knee and examined it. The normally dark metal gleamed like polished silver. Whatever had wrecked the room, polished the steel, and consumed everything else, had also stripped the matte black finish from the pistol. She picked it up with her gloved fingers. It was a breach of protocol, but now that she knew this was more than a crime scene, protocol was out the window. The weapon smelled like it had been cooked in a crock-pot with rancid meat. She popped the magazine. It was empty. There were no rounds left in the pistol. She sniffed the barrel. The smell of cordite was strong enough to overcome the fetid stench. She slammed the magazine back into the weapon and then placed it in a vest pocket. The room was completely silent save for the sound of the circulating air. She peered up at the vents and suddenly wished she had a set of blueprints to this place. "So whatever it is started in this room, tore through the quarantine tunnel and then headed to the trauma center? Then it would..." Something clicked in her head. She quickly walked from the room and past Kilfoyle into the hall leading to the trauma area. Sarah followed the shining path on the floor. Now that she knew what to look for, the trail was impossible to miss. The sides of the floor were unevenly polished as if whatever had done it hadn't filled up the entire hallway. A swath in the center of the floor shined more brightly than the rest. As with the glass doors leading to the trauma center, the area was completely clean, including the edges. But the tile floor had a sheen to it, as though something had turned in a circle. She felt someone's eyes on her and looked up. Perkins stared at her through the glass doors, eyebrows raised. She shook her head at him and continued following the trail. The shining tile ended in front of the first room on the left. "Boss? Hang on, O'Malley." She walked into the room. Perkins hadn't been kidding about the wall. Exposed wires dangled from the massive hole. That smell of something rotten frying hit her nostrils immediately, although it wasn't very strong. She poked her head into the hole and looked sideways. Whatever had pushed through the wall hadn't bothered to mess with the wiring and pipes in the dead space between the sheetrock panels. The PVC pipes holding the wiring were intact on neither side of the ragged hole. A whiff of ozone told her at least one of the electrical wires had shorted out, but that was minor damage compared to what she saw on the other side. Rather than leaving the room through the door and walking back out into the hallway, Sarah crawled through the misshapen hole. Her knee pads crushed drywall, eliciting a spray of crumbling material. The elbow pads in her uniform smacked into the ragged sides, causing even more damage. She didn't care. Halfway through, she realized the wires touching her back could be live and filled with electricity, but if that were the case, she'd already be dead. "Good idea," she told herself. "Something's in the hospital, you're quarantined, and you try and kill yourself with electricity. Perfect." She made a mental note not to try this again. Sarah poked her head into the other room. The door was open, and she could see Givens's tall, lean silhouette in the hallway. Sarah awkwardly climbed through and stood. She pounded her gloved hands together, and a cloud of white dust filled the air. She sneezed, wiped her nose, and surveyed the damage. A large metal rectangular box was attached to the far wall. The side facing her was mostly shining, as if polished. The rest of its surface dull and even rusted in places. Sarah walked to it and sat on her haunches. A metal plate bore the word "Danger." Another showed a lightning bolt of electricity. Other than the gleaming metal surface, she didn't see any damage to the electrical box, but it wasn't humming, and it wasn't giving off any heat. She frowned. Sarah climbed atop the box and peered down over the back. A severed PVC pipe led to the wall. The wires inside were completely stripped of insulation. "God damn it," she mumbled. Givens had turned on the lights in the room and they functioned fine. So what the hell was this box supposed to power? Sarah turned and looked around. Affixed to the adjacent wall sat a rack of flat, rectangular boxes. Each had a strip of dead LEDs with labels. Finally, it clicked. This was a VoIP exchange. If the hospital's phones ran on this system, they were completely dead. Unless, of course, there was another trunk somewhere in the hospital. She hoped only the ER/trauma annex was out. Otherwise, they were really screwed. Sarah looked down at the ragged hole in the middle of the floor. Perkins hadn't been kidding. The tiled floor had chips in it near the hole, as if a pickaxe had come down again and again on its surface. "Givens?" she yelled toward the hall. The tall man leaned in the doorway. "Boss?" She gestured to the door. "Is that metal?" He blinked and then gently tapped his rifle barrel against it. The metal door clanged softly. "Yeah, boss. Steel. Heavily reinforced." She nodded and looked back at the floor. Below was complete darkness, and that smell rose to her nostrils. She pulled a long halogen flashlight from her belt, flipped it on, and shined it into the hole. The narrow beam of light illuminated broken ducts, trashed PVC pipes, and even a broken water pipe dripping water into the area below. The bottom of the hole was at least 10 meters down, 2 stories worth of a gap. The light stabbed through the clutter of wreckage and hit the concrete floor at the bottom. The beam reflected from impossibly clean and polished stone. Shit. "Boss?" She turned and faced the door. Givens' normally impassive face held a line of concern. The man was stoic to the point of near inhumanity. Seeing him with that look on his face was more than enough to make her worried. "Yeah, Givens?" "What's going on?" He delivered the words in a dead croak. She'd heard that voice before in Basra, right before they walked into the worst firefight of her short military career. Without him and Perkins fighting like maniacs, the entire squad would have been lost. She'd done her best to get them all out alive, and received a commendation for doing so. But Givens and Perkins, 2 unrelated men that had bonded like brothers, were the 2 that saved them all. She owed them her life, and they, for reasons she didn't understand, thought they owed her theirs. Those thoughts drifted through her mind before she figured out why he looked concerned. He trusted her instincts, and if she was worried, he would be too. "I don't know," she said. She fought the urge to force a grin. That might help calm a rookie like O'Malley, but Perkins and Givens would see right through it. "But we need to figure it out." "Boss," Ebb's voice said through the radio. She tapped her headset. "Go ahead. Still can't get dispatch on the line. No radio signal. Hell, my cell doesn't even work, and it's got 5 damn bars." "Understood." Givens' eyes widened a bit, and then narrowed to their normal impassive state. Goose flesh prickled her spine. "Eb, you and Schneck search for a landline, something that's hooked up to the wall with a hard connection, not one of those IP phones." "Yes, boss. Over and out." She looked back at the hole and tapped the barrel of her rifle with her gloved fingers. They were trapped inside the hospital. There was nowhere to go. With the partition in place separating them from the main building, she didn't even know if there was another way out of this place. The assailant, that was the only word she dared use, had escaped through the floor and into the basement. This floor was clear. Safe. At least for now. Could the assailant come back up? She didn't know, and that was the problem. She walked out of the room and closed the metal door behind her, Givens backing up to make room. We need to find some metal, something to block this room off from the other. Givens said nothing, but cocked his head. It was his version of asking a question. I don't think it can go through metal or glass, she said. Givens walked past the door to the wall. He rapped on its surface, and Sarah's heart sank as a hollow boom resounded in the hallway. I don't think there's metal shielding the room. If the enemy broke through the walls, what's going to keep it from doing the same thing again? He had a point. She did her best to keep her face as impassive as his. Then we'll have to keep the civvies in the trauma center. It couldn't get through there before. If we're lucky, it won't even try again. He gave her a curt nod. Orders? Orders? What a joke. I want you and Perkins in this hallway. Stand guard over this room and the next. If the enemy comes back, I want an immediate warning. If that warning is a hail of bullets, all the better. Yes, boss. He followed her until he was past the first violated room. He stopped and turned around to face the rest of the hallway. She continued walking until she reached the trauma center's glass walls. Perkins stood inside the doors. The 3 doctors were still sitting on the floor. She opened the door and blocked it from closing with a foot. You and Givens cover the hall. He has the orders. Yes, boss, Perkins said. She left room for him to exit, and then stepped inside. The glass door thumped closed behind her. How fucked are we? Mathis asked from the floor. Sarah didn't like the color in the man's face, let alone his tone. He was scared and exhausted to boot. Those suits had to be hotter than hell, even in the cool operating suites. I don't know, she said. The military has quarantined the ER exit. Shit, Dr. Harrell said. Sarah nodded. So we have no way out, and I assume no one is coming in to help us. Fucking awesome, Mathis said. So now what? What's below us? Sarah asked. Harrell opened her mouth and then turned to Sharma. The Indian doctor was no longer in a modified fetal position, but he looked as if he'd pass out at any moment. Dr. Sharma, what's below us? The doctor slowly turned his head as if on rusted hinges. He blinked twice. What? What's below us? Harrell asked again. Security, cafeteria, administration offices. Sharma's words flowed out in a trickling monotone of syllables. The CDC docs might be scared, but at least they were holding it together. Sarah didn't know how much longer this man could hold out. And when he finally lost it, what was he going to do? Security? She asked. How many guards? Sharma looked up at her with glazed, vacant eyes. I don't know. Sarah nodded. She'd expected as much. She pointed to Harrell and Mathis. You guys should get out of those suits before you fry. We should, Harrell agreed. But Ellis wouldn't be able to track us or see through our cameras. She lifted one shoulder, and Sarah finally saw the tiny metal eye attached to her suit. Who's Ellis? Dr. Paul Ellis, Mathis said. He's in our mobile command center outside. We can't reach him, but he should at least be able to see us. Sarah shifted her feet. I wouldn't count on that. We can't get a radio signal to dispatch. Cell phones aren't working even though they have 5 bars of signal. And your, creature destroyed the IP phone trunks. At least for the annex. Mathis loosed a short, humorless laugh. Huh, we're cut off. He glanced at Harrell. They're playing things by the numbers. What are you talking about? Sarah asked. Harrell sighed. Lockdown. Major cities are prone to panic. Riots. Remember how bad the evacuation was for Hurricane Rita? How many people got stranded and nearly died in their goddamn cars? Yeah? Just imagine, Harrell continued, what would happen if even one person posted on social media about what's going on here, or if phone calls were made, or if someone snapped a photo of that thing and put it up on the internet. First off, Ben Taub would be surrounded by gawkers, and then once they realized just how much danger they were in, they'd panic, head for the hills, and it would spread. She shook her head. We've run the simulations. They're terrifying. So they killed our access to the outside world? Mathis nodded. He put an arm around Harold. Exactly. Homeland are the only ones that will talk to us now. No one else in the goddamn world even knows we exist.